Welcome everyone to another edition of Broadcasting on the Beach with Halftime Howie, live from Poncho's Cantina, 4245 Austin Boulevard in Island Park. And once again, I'm dedicating this show to my mom, who on Monday night fractured her pelvis in a fall. And I was with her Tuesday through Saturday, recovering. And I want to thank all my Facebook friends for all the heartfelt wishes. And Mom's a trooper. She never complained about the pain. She's getting better, and she's on the mend. But talk about pain. We are tackling a very serious subject on the show, suicide, preventing suicide, and so much to talk about today. We have on my left Taylor Greenberg, who's going to come at it from what it's like being transgender and what the transgender community faces, and a topic of the fact that 40% of all transgender Americans have either committed suicide or attempted suicide, so we'll discuss that. And my great friend Jackie Shelley, dear friend of the show, dear friend, lost her son Daniel, took his own life, and Jackie started her own foundation, Danny's Dream. So we're going to talk about that, and let's talk about first this. Let's start with this. This show, 13 Reasons Why, a show on Netflix, certainly has raised awareness. But Jackie, not all people think that everything they did was great on this show. Talk about, from your perspective, the pros and cons of 13 Reasons Why.
Okay. First of all, I'm happy to be here. I'm very happy to meet you, Taylor. What I'd like to say, I've posted, at the time it had first come out, I had posted a lot of different feelings and thoughts about this series. My own initial reaction was that, wow, this is really good that they're doing something to elucidate the illness that creates suicide. After watching it, I have mixed feelings and mixed there's mixed information. First of all, in short, this young lady was very ill with a mental disorder, and she goes about taping like 13 different tapes, in essence showing her stressors, but also blaming 13 different people, pointing to them as the cause of her precipitous suicide, and then of course gives the tapes in a very manipulative way to somebody, which is a tremendous burden, would be to give that type of information to another human being after the loss, after they've already died. So that first really was a terrible thing that she did in this piece of fiction. Secondarily, this is fiction, so there's a lot of sort of not psychologically accurate information. There's not a lot of psychologically accurate behavior. The parents in this show are looking to find out these, looking for these reasons why this young lady died by suicide, yet didn't see any of the warning signs coming. There are warning signs, and there are also warning signs and risks, and this young lady was showing all kinds of signs. She cut her hair off. She was becoming increasingly remote to her parents, and the parents just kept, you saw in the show, they kept perseverating about their business and their business and their business, and they weren't really worried about what time she was coming in, what time she was going out, that she cut 2 feet off of her hair, so a lot of these things, she was going to the school counselor, but she wasn't really being honest, and then the school counselor wasn't really picking up on things. So to me, the thought that, any one person or 13 people could cause me to take my own life is not realistic. The reality of suicide is, there are usually warning signs and there are risks. Suicide risks are if you have someone in your family who's died by suicide, if you've got excruciating physical or mental pain. Warning signs: cutting your hair off, doing things that are not the norm, talking about suicide, isolating, withdrawing, behaving in unusual ways. Suicide is the culmination of many different factors that push a person into what I believe is a psychotic state, and they feel they have no choice other than escape. The other thing I did not like about this show, and I know many foundations have come out against the actual showing of the suicide,
You feel it was overdone, overkill.
Well, the method of suicide. What they say.
It was way too graphic.
What
in your
they
opinion.
say in the literature is you showing or referring to the method of suicide is generally can stimulate what we call suicide contagion, or may make it look attractive. If anything, they should have just faded to black. That really was a line that psychologists, researchers just ask the press, and print to not do that, because it can romanticize it. She didn't look like she was in much pain. There was no screaming, or it just didn't seem realistic to me. So that's some of my thoughts.
Okay. Taylor Greenberg, this show largely has been targeted to teens. I'd like to know your perspective on this show, and we'll get into the transgender issue next. But your perspective of this show, what was the impact coming from a teen perspective?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with what you said with the very graphic depictions, how they didn't realize it as much as they should have, and they made it look somewhat attractive to someone who was already thinking about suicide. They go, oh wow, that seems like an easy thing. And if they're looking for escape, it kind of made it seem like it was easy to do, and it really isn't. But the high school perspective of it, I found a little bit more realistic.
Yes.
And I do again agree that she made these tapes blaming and throwing all this hate onto the 13 people that she found that caused her to do this. And I don't think that would be realistic to the actual symptoms of someone who's feeling that way, because they feel like they're a burden to other people, and they feel like everyone else has been so nice.
Exactly,
and
that's
they're
very
causing
good.
all this trouble. So in real life, she wouldn't be this outgoing to these people and being, oh, you did this.
That's
you
a very
did
good
this.
point, Taylor. I just want to say, Taylor, you are very astute, because a suicidal person feels like they are a burden to others, and they would never project their internal state onto other people. So that was a really good point I just wanted to say that was very astute. And you're absolutely on target. They wouldn't be organized enough, because they'd be so depressed. They wouldn't be organized enough to make these tapes.
And most people who carry out that hate to other people only do it to make themselves feel better, and that was not the point of her feeling suicidal and depressed about all these people that she had thought had hurt her.
Now, Taylor, I'd like you to respond to this. In the story, it mentions several groups, and it says that help is available. And I'd like to read this paragraph and have Taylor respond. It's from the Trans Lifeline, and it says, a 2015 study conducted by the National Center for Transgender Equality found that 40% of trans Americans surveyed had attempted suicide. This nonprofit organization offers crucial support to members of the community in crisis, enlisting transgender volunteers to staff its phone lines for a safe space of support. Translifeline.org can be reached at 877-565-8860. Taylor, you read that paragraph, and how would you respond to that?
I've heard a lot about that. Many trans Americans have attempted or committed suicide, and it does relate to the rest of the LGBT community. And when it comes to being transgender, there's a lot more factors. Like, there's a lot of changes some people have to go through. Like in my case, when you're in high school, you're not really of legal age to do so much yet unless you have support from your family, which that does help, but the majority of parents these days don't exactly accept it as much, and sometimes that either causes a strain on the parent-child relationship, or they just don't tell the parent and they start hiding other things from them. And in school, usually some people want to be called a different name, they want other people to use different pronouns, and not everybody conforms to that, not everybody. And it's hard because you have to go around and you have to tell all these people, and it can cause a lot of strain on the child who feels this way. And I don't think there's enough out there that, like, helplines, and they should be a lot more used than they do, because I know a lot of people feel, oh, why, I'm just talking to a person, that's not going to help. But it does, because someone I met recently gave me this great quote: it gets worse before it gets better. And although talking to someone, they're going to tell you it gets better, and they can give you these resources, but the only thing that can really help you is time.
Taylor, thanks for sharing. And Jack, I can tell you were so impressed with Taylor.
Taylor is extremely astute and just you're a really hip person. And I'm very proud to meet you, Taylor. And you must have a lot of support, and you definitely have a lot of insight, and you're going to help a lot of people. And I know you're going to, and they say it does get worse before it gets better. That's like a lot of things in our lives, like Howie mentioned his mom. But if we all learn to sort of support each other and hold each other up instead of blaming and shaming and pushing around, things can get better. I've gotten better, but it's life is a process, and we do, like you said, talk does definitely help. But you have to be open, and you
have
also
to kind of embrace that this is kind of the worst part, and you kind of have to embrace that and go out and find people who will agree with you and help you get through it.
Yes, and what I'll say too for my own situation is that you go through cycles. It goes up and down and up and down and up and down, and the ups will be longer and the downs will be shorter. But I think one of the most important things is that we get this. We talk, we get information out, and we try to get the most accurate information. Whether it be about 13 reasons, glamorizing. Anyway, is that a word? Glamorizing certain things, it may not be so helpful, trying to stay, within certain, like you said, there's certain things I can do at certain ages, sort of knowing that there are processes and procedures, and that there's good information out there, and then there's not such good information out there about all of these things is something we need to kind of keep in mind.